everybody. This is Caller ID. We're calling about your identity, your direction, and what you're doing with your life. I'm Brandon Davis Wells. Let's dig into what we're really doing here. Well, welcome into Caller ID, the podcast where we have honest conversations about identity, calling, career, and how those things intersect at every stage of life. Today, I'm really glad to be joined by a good friend, Dr. Robert Poole, who serves right now as the Vice President for Student Affairs at Ashland University, Vice President of Student Affairs and Auxiliary Services. So before coming to Ashland, Rob served in senior leadership roles at places like Houghton College, Hobart and William Smith Colleges, and the University of Evansville. He holds a PhD in higher ed leadership, along with advanced training and all kinds of things like counseling and communication. Outside of work, Rob has a wife and 3 kids. Today, we're talking leadership, belonging, and the kind of formation that happens over time in careers, classrooms, workplaces, families, and everyday life. Rob, thanks for jumping on the call, my friend.
My pleasure, Brandon. So glad we could do this, man.
Well, look, let's just dive right in. How do you usually describe what you do to somebody who you just met?
Oh, well, first I tell them I have the best job on campus. I get to work with so many amazing people in an environment where learning and growth is the center of everything we do. Not only that, it's also hyper-focused on how we manage and guide and mentor in vocation or calling. So it's joy to be able to do that every single day here.
And your current role or your season of work, what does a typical week look like for you? I know that can be different by the week, but if you were to try to break one down.
Yeah, so I have about 11 folks who report directly to me all over the university, from residence life to activities and program, Christian ministries, health, wellness, and then a wide variety of activities and programs in our auxiliary services. So dining, catering, our bookstore, and so forth. So we basically cover the out of class life. And so my daily work involves, as you might expect, really talking with, communicating with other key leaders on campus, including student leaders, about the daily goings on, needs, priorities of the university, managing resources, not just, funding, but also time, and most importantly, and most preciously, our human resources.
Rob, when you were 18, did you think you'd be doing something like this? How about this? What did you think you'd be doing with your life when you were 18?
Well, initially, I was hoping to go into the sciences and become an astronaut. That was my big childhood dream for a long time.
Nice.
And then I got into physics.
That sort of delayed that or destroyed that dream, huh?
Physics and math. I actually loved it, but not a math whiz by any stretch of imagination. God's clear calling was, no, you're going to work with people. Initially, I thought, and I was actually headed to the Army. I'd already done the delayed entry program, or the DEP program, where you can sign up when you're still enrolled in high school and then get shipped off when you graduate. Ironically, around 18 years old, not much time to spare, my dad, who was an Army recruiter for 22 years, and in fact, one of the nation's leading recruiters, he won what's called the Army recruiting ring, kind of like a Super Bowl ring. He convinced me, and so did my mom, of course, to say, you need to go to college, and made a way for me to do that. And so off I went as a first generation college student to Southeast Missouri State, having no idea what I was going to do at all. Completely just tabula rasa, blank slate. And I could tell you more about that, but when I was 18 years old, I was a whole basket of confused.
Yeah, well, most of us were, right? Some of us still are at 48. That's okay. I would say, to that, there's life is full of times where we say yes to something, or we say no to something, or sometimes something says no to us or yes to us. But that no to the Army. Any other examples of saying yes to something or no to something that has completely shifted your life, that you look back and say, "Ooh, I should have said yes to this, or I should have said no to this, or I'm glad I said yes to this or no to this"?
Man, I am so blessed. I've had very few regrets in my decision making over the years. God has led me in ways that I I can't even really describe in a short period of time here. But the first thing I said yes to was, yeah, I'm going to go to college. And not knowing anyone, not knowing really anything about it, no one in my family had gone to college on either side before, other than my dad, who was doing a few correspondence courses to be a pilot, and he actually fulfilled that, but he never went to college. The next thing I said yes to was not long after orientation. One of my residence hall staff members in Towers West said, "Hey, you should run for Towers West Hall Council president." I'm like, okay.
All right, so there's a
Uh,
yes, right?
a short campaign later, and I get thrust into what would later be a long career in higher education. Basically, learning how residence halls work, kind of getting a glimpse of what administration's like. And that kind of was my first step into the world of higher education administration with the student leadership role. And it was a great time. Leadership, communication, planning meetings, agendas, all kinds of stuff. It was interesting what God was doing at that time to plant a few seeds that later sprouted. But to answer your question more broadly, I've at 18, I didn't have this structure of in my mind, but now I know after reading and studying and the scriptures and others who are much smarter than me, there's kind of a three-legged stool that I use when it comes to discernment. Prayer, like honest, earnest prayer, and usually for a good amount of time, reading scripture daily, and then hearing the community around me, specifically from people who are pursuing their faith and listening to what they say about me. Those three things tend to give me the best understanding of who I am, whose I am, and what I should be doing to serve others.
That concept of communal discernment is something that is folks in the Brethren Church, which is the tradition I have belonged to, uh, use that a lot, and I have also tended to lean into all of those things as well. How about walk us down the path that led you to where you are now, especially some turns that you might not have expected. You've been around the
Yeah.
country, you've been in different roles, you've been pursued, you've pursued things. So sort of walk us down that career path and what that's looked like for you.
In grad school, for our career counseling class, we had to map out every place we've lived, including if you moved within a town. And I redid that exercise about a year ago and realized I've moved or had 25 different addresses in my lifetime. I'm 53, almost 54. So you can do the math on average. I've moved around quite a bit. So I've had a lot of community members speak to me, friends, colleagues, coaches, mentors, faculty over those years. And I've been so impressed with how people have just given me little nods, like
Mm,
little encouragements, little, and corrections.
sure.
I've had professors who've told me you're going to fail my class if you don't straighten up, kind of thing. Actually, my sixth grade teacher, Candace West, English teacher, was the first time I got a knock across the noggin
Can't do that anymore.
symbolically. Yeah, symbolically anyway. I got my progress report back, and it was an F in the class. This is when I first started going to school and back in Alaska, in Anchorage, Alaska. And from that point on, I busted my rear end. I learned what it means to not be successful and what excellence means. I got an A in that class by the end of the semester, end of the year, and I never made another B after that. Candace West is one person I really credit for turning me around. Um, I don't know what happened to her, but she was instrumental in my growth for sure.
Hmm, fascinating. So was there a moment in a role that you've been in, past, present, where you felt like everything clicked, or has it been a slow unfolding in the various roles you've been in?
No, that's a great question. No, in fact, most of my work, I say it's the best job on campus, and it really is, but it's also quite a struggle because you're dealing with human beings, and we are a messy bunch.
Hmm.
We are stiff-necked,
We sure are.
right? And people have you can communicate, and you think that meaning is going from you to another person with 100% comprehension. That's rarely the case. So I would say most of the time I'm over communicating and trying to read the room with nonverbal cues that require me to be on my toes quite a bit. So as it comes to calling, though,
Yeah.
it is interesting when you're doing work and you're trying to be an encouragement to others, you're trying to equip them to serve well and to give them good feedback. I often, and this is something I've been working on for a lifetime. I've often tried to be in control, and the older I get, the more I realize I'm not in control. God is in control. I am doing his will. As soon as I stop remembering that, I start having feelings of anxiety. I start having feelings of I'm not in control. I start scenario building like all things are going to fall apart.
Yeah.
But when I'm resting in his will, when I'm confident and trusting that he's ultimately in control, man, it's just life's so much better.
That brings me to my next question. You ever deal with imposter syndrome? Because it kind of goes along with that, right, in the job. And I think everybody at some point has had it. And like, does that ever creep up on you? And if it has, what strategies do you use to sort of push that away?
Early in life, my parents taught me that I can do anything that I put my mind to and that I pray about. Right. So I I I have had those moments. They've been, I wouldn't say few, but they space themselves out, especially if I get too big for my britches. And that's happened more than one time.
Hmm.
So uh what I've done and how I've dealt with imposter syndrome is to literally take time and think about what my true purpose is in that moment. We were all called to do things that we're not equipped for. In fact, God rarely puts us in things where we're perfectly equipped and trained and ready. He usually puts us in positions where we don't feel like we're ready. So, like after I got my PhD, people started calling me doctor. I was like, that was just so foreign to me. I'm like not one of those old guys who knows everything. And I still don't. But that was probably the height of imposter syndrome where I felt like this is just not right for a first generation college student.
We when you and I first met, you introduced yourself, and I asked you, like a lot of American men do, what do you do for a living? And your response was so formative to me, and I talked about it in the pilot episode. You said, I serve as the vice president of student affairs. And I have never forgotten that. And I've shared that with countless people to say when we get into the conversation about identity, because I asked you, so I remember asking you, it was either then or it was a couple weeks later, you said I serve as. Can you speak to that? Because that's something that really struck me, and your answer was fantastic.
Oh, well, I adopted that at some point, maybe a few points in my formative years. Either my dad or others had told me, "You're not your job. You, you, and who you are and who you belong to is not your career. Don't ever make that mistake." So when I would hear people say, "I am," whatever title came after that, it kind of struck me as odd. So I just made the decision, not long after grad school, to say I serve as the coordinator of volunteer services, the director of student activities, and so on and so forth. And that is just a daily check on me to be like, you're not your job, you're not your career. You are a child of God, and you are whatever and wherever God places you. There's a Wesleyan. Uh, I was a part of a Wesleyan church for a long time. The Wesleyan covenant prayer says something to the effect. I have it hanging on my wall here, and it says, "I'm no longer my own, but thine. Put me to what thou wilt. Rank me with whom thou wilt. Put me to doing. Put me to suffering." And it goes through several stanzas and says, "You put me to what you want me to do, Lord. Doing nothing, being employed, not being employed. Let it be ratified in heaven. So be it. Amen." And that's
I
kind of,
love that. Yeah.
yeah. I wish I could say I've lived that perfectly. No,
Right.
absolutely not. None of us do. But to give, you've heard this phrase, let go and let God.
Mhm. Corny but true.
Corny but true, pithy. But man, it works. It works.
Have there been any seasons in your life where work felt um, where work felt aligned or didn't feel aligned with who you are, and you said, "Oh, I got to do something different." Is that because I think that happens to everybody as well?
Yeah, and I've been at 5 different institutions, including working at my master's institution. Yeah, I think you reach that point where like, you know what? It feels like I've done everything I should be doing here, and I'm feeling a void. I'm feeling like I don't see the vision in front of me anymore. I don't see the. I often ask myself, what value are you adding to those around you, Rob?
Yeah, that's a valid question, and that kind of brings me to the next, or like a subset of that question.
Yeah.
What gives your work meaning right now? What do you look forward to when you say, "All right, I can't wait to help with this. I can't wait to do," what is giving your work meaning right now?
Yeah. Comedian Michael Jr., maybe you've heard of him. He's a great Christian comedian, hilarious. He has a bit on this. He talks about well, it's not a bit, it's actually a piece of his wisdom. He says,
They can be
you
both,
know,
Rob. That's okay.
yeah, right, right. He says, think about not what you do, but who and how you serve.
Hmm.
So he talks about the mechanics. He says, what do you do? He says, well, I fix cars. And he says, well, actually, you help empower people to get to their destination.
Hmm.
You take away barriers, you provide. So I thought that was so well put. He also has another bit where he talks about God is like GPS, where you can make a different turn in the path. It'll recalculate. It'll still tell you how to get back to your destination, no matter which way you go. You can still choose to disregard it or not. So when it comes to how I think about my life and service, and whether or not I'm doing what should be giving value to others, I ask myself that question every single day. Like, am what I do, does what I do add value to others, or am I being disruptive? And that's happened to me pretty recently, actually, where I felt like, man, am I doing anything that's worth anything? I have that question pop in my head a lot.
Yeah,
And
like
God still has me
Solomon.
here. He still has me here.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's good to keep asking those questions. Some people talk about calling, which is a big word, right? And some
Yeah,
folks that maybe aren't as in a faith tradition or from a faith perspective will talk about purpose or fit. And in a lot of ways, it's the same thing. It's just different language and it's a little
right.
different. But how do you think about that in relation to your work? The idea of purpose, calling, fit. It all kind of goes back to what we've been talking about. But, maybe speak on that.
Yeah, and I love Buechner's quote that's been used quite a bit. Your calling is where your deep gladness meets the world's biggest hunger or deepest hunger. I'm probably not quoting that properly,
Yeah, I think
but
you're close. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you love doing something, if you have figured out in your lifetime, no matter how old you are, what your heart kind of pines for, and I always tell people, you're passionate about something when while you're doing it, you lose track of time. Like you have no idea what time it is. You're like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for 3 hours. I thought it was 10 minutes. That's kind of the way I feel like when I'm talking with students, when I'm helping them overcome issues. I rarely look at a clock when someone's in distress. I deal a lot with crises, students who are dealing with personal crises, or we just had a fire in a residence hall during the Thanksgiving break, and your mind just laser beam focuses on that. So I know that many of the things that I'm called to in this job really resonate with where I can turn it on and be very successful, not perfect, but successful. And there are things about my job that frankly, I almost said a word, but I'm just horrible at, and I know
Yeah.
it. Like, I can do budgeting, but it's not my best.
Yeah, that
I'm not
makes
an
two of us.
accountant.
Right.
Right, right. I'm much, much better at it than I was 10 years ago, but
Yeah.
it's still not my forte.
I talk with when I was at the university level. I talk with students all the time, and I still share this concept of ikigai, the Japanese term, which means
Yes.
the four concentric circles, right? Something you love to do, something you're good at, something the world needs, kind of like the Buechner quote, right? And then something you can get paid for. And
Yeah.
so when you're in the sweet spot of those four concentric circles in the middle, and sometimes you kind of jump around or you bounce around, but man, when you're on target in that middle red zone, there's nothing sweeter, and that time does just slip away.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this work is something you chose, something you grew into, or something you responded to? You kind of answered that already.
I think this work chose me because I was looking to go to the army,
Yeah,
and boom, I was pulled in 180 degrees different direction.
yeah.
And then when I finished my undergrad, I was heading to law school. That was my thing. I was a philosophy major,
So
and I
why
had been
not?
accepted to law school at UMKC,
Yeah.
and was waiting for my ticket to get there. And uh, was at a, was at an airport with my family heading to Disney World and telling my uncle, this is the days before, when you could go up to the gate with someone and just see them off. And my uncle was there, who's a chiropractor. I was telling him about my plans to go to law school, and there was an attorney, unbeknownst to me, sitting right behind me. You know how the seats in like a gate are back to back. He heard what I was saying, came around and injected himself and said, "I'm sorry, I overheard you talking about going to law school, and you sound like you're a little bit skittish about it. Let me tell you what it's like to be an attorney." Well, he was an attorney, it turns out, didn't know who I was talking to and a family member. He was an attorney that sued chiropractors. My uncle standing there was a chiropractor. And he proceeds to tell me how what life was like working as a corporate attorney or even a private attorney. And essentially, long story short, helped me realize that's probably not the route. Fast forward a couple of weeks, I'm at an event at Southeast Missouri State where I was an undergrad and just getting ready to graduate. My vice president for student affairs asks me, her name is Sue Ann Strom, Jewish woman from Minnesota. She asked me, "What are you doing after school?" And I told her, law school, but I'm having all these second thoughts. And she said, "Why don't you come work for me in orientation? We'll pay you. We'll give you a stipend. We'll pay for your grad school, and you can do this orientation thing that you've been doing as a student leader for 2 years." I was like, "Sign me up, man! That's awesome." So
Wow.
I feel like I've been called into the work rather than me pursuing it.
That's awesome. That's a great reminder. Sometimes we forget to tell ourselves those stories, right? Of like, oh yeah, now I remember how I ended up here.
Yeah.
All right, couple more questions for you. Some bigger picture. What do you wish somebody had told you about work or careers when you were younger? Not necessarily as a teen, but maybe, or even in your 20s and your 30s as you were
Mm.
exploring things.
Put more in retirement. I've put some back, but I realized, at 54 years old, almost 54, I could have probably been saving twice as much and be much, much better off. But that's not that's materialistic. It's
Sure.
nice, but I would say too is something I've been living into more in my later years. Just because you finish school doesn't mean you should stop pursuing learning and to always be in a growth mode. Carol Dweck, professor from Stanford, wrote the book Mindset. She talks about the difference between growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And man, if you want to live a full, rich, happy life, in addition to pursuing your faith, keep learning, read, talk with mentors, look at webinars, learn a new skill, even if it's not anything related to your actual job. Learn what your next job is going to entail. Keep pursuing, learning, and growing. Don't stop.
How do you define a good career at this stage of your life?
I think a good career, not just a job, but a good career gives you a path to grow and get promoted, right? So whatever that is, if you're growing in your ability, your skills, your ability to serve, being what was the word? Collaborative and contributing is the word I'm thinking of, and you're growing in that capacity, you need to be in a place that values you to help you keep moving forward. If not, move on. Don't stay and stagnate because you will career-wise die.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to move. It's scary sometimes, but in order to move up, sometimes you got to move around, as they say.
Especially in higher ed. And I think that's good
Yeah,
advice. All right, a couple of funner ones, more fun. Fun? Yeah,
funner. I love it.
funner. Yeah, I was a journalism and English
Grammar.
major. Right. Yeah. What do you do for fun? And this is the question that I like to ask people now when I meet them instead of saying, what do you do for a job? One of the first things I want to ask people is, what do you do for fun?
Well, you know this for sure. I
Not
love to be
everybody
behind.
listening does, though.
I love to be, but I love to make live music, period. Anywhere I can be, I think that's one of the gifts God's given me is to be with others and create, or just make great live music. So I'm a drummer, and I've been spending crazy number of hours these past week or two just learning some old songs from Rush that I've not been able to play for a long time, and starting to get back in the saddle on that. But yeah,
They call you the
that's
work. They call you the working man, Rob.
that's right. That's absolutely right. He's that band is one of the most prolific writing of significantly difficult drum parts to play if you're a drummer out there.
I used to play in a band with Rob, and we referred to him as Dr. Sticks since he had the PhD. I don't think there's a whole lot of qualified drummers with a PhD, although apparently I've met another one here down
Apparently,
in
yeah.
Wilmington, North
My
Carolina.
doppelganger, I guess.
So, as you think about career and leadership, what situations tend to trigger your inner Larry David, frustration, insecurity,
Uh,
misalignment, and what helps you return to your inner Ted Lasso, where like purpose, joy, grace that are more present? What triggers those two things?
Beautiful. I love the imagery there, man. Um, I fight the Larry David a lot. I do. You mentioned imposter syndrome. I feel like that off and on
Mm,
multiple times throughout the week. Um, but I have to give myself grace.
yeah.
I'm not perfect, and if you're listening out there, none of us are. So don't be so damn hard on yourself. Let yourself breathe. Let yourself make mistakes, and then we learn from them. And I have to be that, uh, this is the dart scene with Ted Lasso when he says, it's not so much that people don't like me, it's that they just don't know me. And
Mm,
I have to remember that a lot because I often will think so and so is not, uh, you know, I may not be fitting in this moment, or it's not about me. It's not about me. It's about everyone else. It's about serving others and give them a chance to know who I am. And here's the last thing I'll say. My president at Houghton College, now Houghton University, Dr. Shirley Mullen, said this on occasion. It really stuck with me too. Rob, you can't make yourself be respected or loved or cared for, whatever the case. You can't make others do that, but you can make yourself worthy of love, worthy of respect. So behave in ways that make yourself worthy. And so that's kind of what I've tried to live my life by as well.
that's beautiful. I really love that. All right, as you look ahead, what kind of work or life are you hoping to grow into next?
My wife and I have talked about this quite a bit, and we want to be in a place where we can be there for our kids and grandkids when those times come along, and it won't be too many more years in advance. So that's the avocation side. That's the grandparent side. On the vocation side, the career side, I want to be in a place where I can truly help people thrive. I want my staff to feel like they're well equipped. I use a structure from Kouzes and Posner's book, The Leadership Challenge, that I have operating in the background all the time. It's, model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, encourage the heart, and equip others to act. I try to live by that. And if I can do that well, then the people around me are going to thrive. You're going to put them in the right place, in the right job. You're going to give them the tools, skills they need, the encouragement, the feedback, and the organization is going to thrive. And just get out of the way, let God do his thing.
Last last set of questions,
Yeah.
and it's just sort of fun. What was your first job?
First job, pitching watermelons in the fields of Northeast Arkansas, Southeast Missouri, just picking up 10, 15-pound fruit, toss them to the guy next to me, filling up trailers for 12 hours,
Wow, that's pretty rough.
making 425 an hour.
Most fun job you've ever had?
Ooh, the most fun job I've ever had. Um, because I had very little responsibility, but all kinds of incredible access to people of amazing talent, was when I was an intern with the Missouri House of Representatives back in the spring of '95. And I just got to know some amazing people and seeing how government works. I got elected as Speaker of the House among my fellow interns, and we just had a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Did you meet anybody famous there that people might know, or are they all dead? Because I know you. It was a long time ago.
Because you're old, Rob.
I was gonna say.
I don't know if there's anyone famous,
Okay.
but many of the people that I knew there, one of them actually went on to be a senator.
Mm.
I'm trying to remember now if he's still around, if he's still alive. I did meet Jack Kemp. I did meet, gosh, I'm trying to remember. It wasn't Robert Kennedy. It was another Kennedy. We met at a function.
Mm.
But no, most people were just
Yeah.
hardworking folks from their home constituency.
Most difficult job.
Ooh, my most difficult job was more of a time during a job rather than the entire job, was when we've had, this is pretty serious, of course, but when we've had students complete taking their life. That's happened twice to me, two different jobs. And the moment where it was just, I felt like the soul was being ripped out of my heart was when I saw the parents for the first time and had to explain to them what was going on. And I was felt like it was just surreal. Like I wanted to get out of there as quick as I could, but obviously that wasn't possible. And we were there for the parents and the family. So less about what was the most difficult job.
Thanks for
and more
listening to
about
the Caller ID
parts of the job.
podcast. Please don't forget to like, share,
good answer,
and
Rob.
subscribe with all of
Not that
your
you need me
friends
to
on all of your social
quantify
media
it.
platforms.
All right.
Thanks again. Signing
Any
off. Brandon
last
Davis Wells.
bits of wisdom you have for our listeners out there when it comes to career, calling, identity, jobs? Last piece. You have the last word.
Yeah. Well, calling, or the Latin word vocare, means to be called, which means something or someone else is calling you to do something. It could be for that moment. It could be for a lifetime career. You got to know who you're following before you can know how you're being called. And if you're not following the Christ, then, as they say, if you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for anything. So that goes for calling. Make sure, as I've tried to learn over my lifetime, make sure you know who's calling you. And the only way to do that is to have a personal relationship with Christ and to study the Word. Surround yourself with people who are also followers of Christ, not exclusively, but calling is being called by someone, and you need to know who that is.
Thanks so much, Rob. We really appreciate you joining us here on the Caller ID podcast.
My pleasure. Brandon Davis Wells, love you, brother.
Love you too.